What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So let's go over everything you need to know about crafting in Diablo 4. So in this video we'll cover several different things. We're going to go over how do we get a legendary power and put it on a yellow item. We'll go over where we can actually get these powers. We're going to go over re-rolling, adding sockets, and upgrading items. Everything will be covered in this video. So I'll have some timestamps in the pinned comment, but let's go ahead and get started. So first off, more people want to craft a legendary power onto an item than really anything in the game. You can take a legendary item or a rare item and craft a legendary power on it. First off, let's go over how we can acquire these legendary powers. So the best way is to actually get the item to drop or use your obols to buy it off of an NPC. And essentially, you just have the legendary item. This can actually roll with a much higher number than one that you're getting it actually crafted on with the codex. So getting the item to drop is the best way because the number rolls the highest. Alternatively, there is also the map over here, and I'll go ahead and open up the map so you guys can see that there are these dungeons, and doing these dungeons will grant you the ability to get a aspect. So this is a legendary power that you can put on a rare or another legendary item. It will override the current one, but these always roll with the lowest number. So you can see where it says 15%. If you get this to drop, it can go way higher. So ideally, you get these as a drop because the numbers will be better. I'm stressing this because it's a very important thing. It's basically to kind of get you started. So if you're looking to min-max, get them as a drop. Now, next up, you can actually re-roll items. And this is actually before we even go into crafting the legendary power onto the item, you want to actually re-roll your item first. And the reason why you want to do this is it's actually going to cost more if you want to enchant later after it becomes a legendary. So let me go and kind of explain this. So if I take, let's say, this item that is a rare item and I put it over here and I want to enchant. Now, the enchantment crafting system is basically like Diablo 3. There are 3 different rolls that you have on the item. You will re-roll that item to have a different roll. So let's say, for example, Ground Stomp. I don't use this at all. You can see it. The cost of it is just going to be a Veil Crystal, and it's 1,000 gold. Now, if I was to take a legendary item, it also requires me to have a Fiend Rose. So, before you even craft a legendary, re-roll the item to have the perfect stat if it is an item that you want to re-roll and create a legendary off of it. So, let's take this for example because it's a pretty decent item, and more importantly, it's because it has 2 sockets, and getting sockets on an item, which we can go over, is actually very, very expensive because it requires a material that right now in the beta, you don't have very much access to it. So, let's take this, for example. Let's say I really like this chess piece. I don't use Ground Stomp at all, right? I'm going to go ahead and click Enchant. And what does this do? So what this does is it makes it so we can't trade it. But we're going to be able to reroll, and I can get extra fire res, or I can get total armor. If I don't want these, let's say I select no change. It still will cost whatever the material is for it, but some of these prices may increase. So right now we still have it Ground Stomp. I want to reroll to something else. Okay, I'm going to go for total armor, and then now we have it with the total armor. Now let's say I want to craft a legendary power on this. So I went over, you can get these via dungeons, and you'll get the aspect to actually craft it to make it a legendary. So I'm going to put this piece in right here, and you're going to see we can either use the Codex of Power, which gives you the low rolls, or I can extract the aspect from my inventory, and I'll show you how that works. So most people are probably just going to go for the Codex Power, and I can, let's say, select this one over here. So this one makes it so damaging an elite enemy grants us a barrier. So if I do this, it's going to go ahead and cost 9,000 gold and some of our failed crystals. So if I do this, bam, now we're going to go ahead and it will override its existing power. This one is a rare. It doesn't have a special power, but this allows you to craft on to another legendary. Now, I go ahead and do that. Bam, I now have converted this into a legendary item. Now, alternatively, if I want to extract the aspect, as in we would take an item and get the legendary power, I can also do that. So, I can put an item in here, and it's going to remove that legendary power off of the item and grant us that extra power. Just as a heads up, this will destroy the item. And on top of that, I want to mention that depending on where you actually put this legendary power, it can increase the stats. Now, every item in the game is able to acquire different aspects and different powers based off of, you see where it says allowed item types: helm, chest, boots, gloves, amulet. Now, amulet has the power increased by 50%, and two-handed weapons can have the power increased by 100%. So ideally, whatever build that you are trying to play, that item slot usually wants to be reserved for two-handers. So I'm playing Barbarian. In this instance, it could be, let's say, my two-handed mace over here, or if I'm playing the Rogue, I would use the bow. Staves if I'm using the Necromancer, Druid, or even the Sorceress. So whatever item that you are using to extract and you need that power, depending on the slot, it will matter. But yeah, basically you take this aspect. It's another way to get rid of the item. Let's see if I have anything else that we can just get rid of over here. So this one over here where it says the when you hit a crowd control enemy, there's a chance for it to spread. Let's say I want this item over here. I want that power because I actually don't really need to remove my amulet. This power over here, let's say I want it. Now it's going to destroy the item. This is permanent. And now we will now have that aspect. So where does it go? It goes inside our inventory in this little tab over here called aspects. Now, if I want to go ahead and put this on an item, I can do that. And remember, I can do this on an item that already has that rarity. So we can still craft on top of it. Now, again, you can't double up on legendaries in terms of the powers, but let's say I wanted this one. It will tell me exactly in terms of the item preview. And remember, whatever the number is, that's what it's going to actually have. So if I was to craft this, you can see exactly it's that same percent. So if I was to use the dungeon codex, it would have a lower value. So we have two different ways. We can't throw one codex and one aspect. And we'll go over all of the rules of crafting in a moment here, and it's very important that you watch the rest of this video because I'll go over the rules of crafting because there are some rules that people don't know about. So that's how we can extract the legendary power and put it on a rare or a legendary item. Now, the next thing I do want to go over is, like I mentioned before, depending on what item it is actually in, there is different legendary powers, and I have a really great website. It's called Maxwell. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of it, but I want to go ahead and highlight it real quick. So depending on what aspect that you want, use this as a resource because you may not see it on the map. Keep in mind right now, it's just the beta. There's going to be a lot more of these powers. So if you're looking for maybe a very specific power, like let's say I'm playing, in our case, we're doing a Thorns Barbarian, we would go to Barbarian and it would just put us right there and we'd see maybe the skills that we want. Let's say we play Whirlwind, right? I can hit Whirlwind, and I can see everything related to Whirlwind. So that way I can find out which item power that I may want to try to extract for my build. So it's a really good resource tool, and I'll also link that down below. So we went over to how to extract and how to go over the imprint. Now, sigils, if you're wondering what this is form of endgame content. We can't do anything with this right now. We already went over the enchantment system. Now, there is a way to upgrade your items as well, and I do want to go over everything in crafting. So let's go ahead and go over, first off, what items do you want to actually upgrade and craft onto, which is actually a very important thing as well. So you'll see that if I highlight over an item, it'll have whatever item power that's right under the name of the item. So you can see right here, this has 300 item power. I would say as long as the item, if you're just playing in the beta, which level 25 is the maximum, try to get an item that has at least 300 item power. It can go beyond that. I'm sure we have some items that go beyond. There's a 336 over there. There's a 320, but make sure the item that you're crafting on has at least 300. The reason why is that roll is actually more important than any of the other rolls that you can actually roll for the enchantment. The reason why is those numbers can also be increased, but right now in beta, most of these numbers roll with such a low value compared to like later in the game because the item scales with the level that you're actually playing at. That's the most important thing, is the damage per second versus the bonus to the vulnerability, basic skill, core skill damage. That can matter, but that's going to matter a lot more later in the game versus right now in the beta. So now that we went over the enchantment system, let's go over the upgrade system because that's something that is pretty important. I don't know who the heck this is. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to visit the blacksmith. So what we were at was called the occultist. That's where we go over all of the enchanting and crafting, but there's also a crafting system at the blacksmith as well as in the jeweler. So let's go ahead and now go over that. So what we're going to be able to do over at the blacksmith is actually craft some extra numerical upgrades. Now these are kind of small, so you'll see that we have salvage, we have repair. Oh, also, where do we get the veiled crystals? You just disenchant your items and you'll get a bunch of the materials. Some of the materials you'll have to find in the world with the whole adding sockets in terms of crafting, that will cost a material that's very rare. But let's go over the upgrade weapons and armor. So if I was to throw something in here, you can see just to upgrade it, it just costs the iron chunks, which you can just find. In fact, most of the stuff that you highlight in the game, it'll tell you it's found in veins nearly everywhere. So it's pretty much going to be explaining where you get the items. Some of them are from like boss drops or more rare drops from monsters. But what does this actually do? If I was to upgrade this, you can see it increases the damage, but it also increases like the prefixes / suffixes. If you played any other action RPGs, it's kind of like upgrading, going from like a T1 to T5, that kind of stuff. That doesn't affect obviously the effectiveness of the jewel, but we'll talk about sockets in a second. But it does increase the numerical values, not only of the DPS, but all of the things that roll in it. But it's such a small amount. You can upgrade items up to the item levels. You can see this is like 1 out of 3, but if I throw, let's say, this in here, it will cost more. And that's why I was telling you guys before, get your items to roll the way that you want to via enchant, and also in the upgrade department before you convert it to a legendary, before getting any of those aspects of the powers. So you can see if I upgrade this, what does this do? And this one has an item level of 3 out of 4. So depending on the item, it can go past 3, if that makes any sense. And also check out the material cost, because again, things will cost more as they are going to be more rare, if that makes any sense in terms of itemization. So now that we went over that, the upgrade in terms of right now, the first number where it says damage per second, that's going to be the most important thing in the beta. But later, the whole like vulnerable damage, that stuff will probably matter a lot more, because it's going to increase based off of a percentage. And if you've played any of the Diablo games, specifically like Diablo 3, you know that like earlier on, items will roll with like, let's say, 1 to 2% attack speed. That doesn't really matter too much. But if you get like 20 or 10% attack speed, that will matter a lot more, because these numbers scale differently depending on the item. So now that we've gone over the upgrades of the items, I want to go over socketing, as well as going over like the other rules of crafting in this game. So let's go over sockets, because sockets are actually very important, especially if you are playing a Thorns build. Thorns really needs these sockets. So we're going to go ahead and head over to this rings and amulets vendor here, and we will show off the crafting as far as sockets go. So you'll see that there's a tab called unsocket. So if I wanted to remove a socket, you can do so. It's right now, as far as it goes, I'm not sure if it's based on the item level, but it's about 5,000 gold to unsocket whatever you have in. Now, if you don't care about the item, I'll give you a bonus tip. Just salvage the item. You'll get the, whatever it's inside the item, you will get that refunded to you, no problem. So you can just basically disenchant the item, and you will get the item back that was socketed inside without having to spend the money to unsocket. So that's a bonus tip. Now, if I want to add sockets to an item, it's actually pretty pricey. So if I put this in here, you'll see that it costs what's called scattered prisms. It's a rare crafting material. You can get it from the world bosses. Now, some items can have more than one socket. Now, this pair of pants, is it really that great? It's okay. It's not something that I think is really insane, but for the sake of the video, I'll put one socket in there. So now we have an extra socket. Now, can I put another socket in here?
Can't use that.
It has the maximum number of sockets. So I can put more items in here. Now, some items, you'll notice they can't have a socket, but some items you can have more than one socket. I believe most things, I think they max out at 2 at the moment, but keep in mind, everything I'm mentioning is in the beta. Things are subject to change. But that's how you add sockets to a item. If I wanted to upgrade jewelry, that is another option as well. It's basically the same, but you can see the different material cost. This is a legendary. So I think maybe for jewelry, as right now you can see, it doesn't cost the extra material. Do I have another? Here I have a ring. So you can see the price of the item in terms of like what it costs. It costs a little bit more gold. Is there a huge difference? Not really. But it's specifically on the other items like the weapons and basically everything on the left side of the inventory. You make sure that you upgrade, you enchant, you do all that stuff first before you go ahead and actually upgrade. Now, the upgrade is kind of the same as the other one. It's very small numerical stats if you are going for the upgrade. It does increase the item power, but that's basically the gist of the crafting system. Now, also, bonus rules that I want to go over that are quite important. So first off, legendaries don't stack effects. So if I was to have the same ability on an item, you can't get like, it won't add like the percent. Like let's say I had 2 of these items where in the legendary in the bottom where you can see where it says Thorns damage dealt has a 32% chance to deal damage to all enemies around you. That ability, if I have another item, it won't be, let's say 64 if I have 2 of them. It takes whatever value is the highest. Now in some Diablo games, you can't equip 2 of the same legendaries. In Diablo 4, you're allowed to run 2 copies of a legendary. However, again, the effects don't stack. It just allows you to run them. Another thing is this item that we extracted and got the power from, we can no longer re-extract the legendary power and put it on another item. Once it's done, that's done. And then on top of that, you cannot modify unique items. I don't know if anyone's gotten a unique item in this beta, but uniques are different. There's just kind of, the item just exists in the game. You can't re-roll those or enchant it with another legendary power. But that's going to wrap things up for everything you know about crafting. If there's anything else in the question department, feel free to go ahead and let me know down below. But thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn on the bell if you want to see more Diablo content in the future, and check the pinned comment for more content. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.